Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
An independent DPP is appointed.
The minister responsible for gaming has a word for gaming house operators. Calm down and look at the numbers.
A new survey reveals most Bahamians do not believe the people's budget is actually for the people.
2 men face separate murder charges in the magistrate's court.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, the Bahamas Gaming Operators Association has given its attorneys the go-ahead to begin legal proceedings against the government over what web shop bosses have labeled a discriminatory and racially charged sliding scale tax, which could see some gaming operators shelling out as much as 50% of revenue to the Treasury. Jasmine Brown has the details in this report.
Monroe says due to the government's unfavorable response, those web shop owners have decided to follow through on their threat of legal action.
We had extended a deadline for the government to engage in talks. We've not had a positive response, and so we have to proceed with settling the documents to go to court.
When he announced the sliding scale tax for gaming houses during his budget communication, Finance Minister Peter Turnquest insisted the increase has to do with equity. Branded by web shop bosses as racially charged and discriminatory, the proposed tax will result in gaming houses that bring in revenue up to $20 million being taxed at a rate of 20%, while those that bring in more than $100 million will be taxed at a rate of 50%. In a letter to Turnquest, operators called for proper consultation and warned that failure to respond within the next 7 days would result in legal action. Well, that deadline has passed, and now Monroe says the association will proceed with its plans.
Well, we're instructed to do it, and our instructions haven't changed.
Monroe also slammed Financial Secretary Marlon Johnson, who said during a television interview last week that disengaged gaming sector employees can become housekeepers or space cleaners at Bahamar. Monroe suggested the government has repeatedly demonstrated its lack of respect for gaming operators.
That's a failure to understand the nature of the industry.
Monroe declined to give details on the pending action, saying they are still finalizing the details. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Well, Tourism Minister Dionisio de Aguilar dismissing gaming operators' claims that the proposed tax hike could decimate the industry, putting as many as 2,000 employees in the gaming industry out of work. He accused critics of pushing their own agendas for political gain. Here's Kyle Joaquin.
Now, de Aguilar said he's obviously going to speak more about this tomorrow during his budget communication, but for now, he's not backing down from these gaming house operators. In fact, he says they've just got to calm down and take a look at the numbers.
What I find interesting is there's no discussion of the numbers. No one talks about the numbers. So let's look at the numbers and then we'll go forward from there.
Are you going to present the numbers?
Absolutely.
Despite pushback from gaming house operators, the tourism minister told our news that while he has heard concerns about the proposed sliding scale tax, government has no intention of reducing the gaming tax.
As far as I'm concerned, it's set in stone now. But, you will see that there's no discussion on what the revenue figures are, no discussion on what the profitability figures are. So how can you conclude whether it's high or not? So let's have an intelligent conversation about it. I just think that everybody is using the hype for their own political gains to push a certain agenda. Let's look at the numbers, let's analyze the numbers, and then come to a conclusion.
Gaming house operators have called the dramatic tax increase discriminatory and accused government of singling out one industry instead of heavily taxing others. However, de Aguilar says government isn't discriminating against web shop owners at all.
I don't think it's discriminatory at all. I think you either agree that it's a sin or it's not a sin. And if you agree that it's a sin, then all sins are taxed heavily. So, the crux of the discussion is, where is the threshold? Where is it high and where is it low? And that's the $45 million question. And that's what we have to decide.
The Gaming House Operators Association also claims gaming houses are being targeted for racial reasons. FML owner Craig Flowers fears it will kill the industry. De Aguilar, who recently accused the industry of sucking the lifeblood out of the economy, said this isn't a move by government to shut down web shops.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think that all of the operators have to step back, analyze their financial statements, and see how it can adjust. Yes, you may have to adjust your business, but will it lead to widespread closures and shutdowns? Absolutely not. I don't think so at all.
For our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Despite efforts by the finance minister to sell the public on why certain tax and fee hikes are necessary, it seems Bahamians aren't buying it. A new public domain survey conducted last week has revealed that the message of the people's budget has fallen flat. Vonique Toot takes a look.
The Minutes administration's latest budget has been deemed an epic fail, according to a new survey released by research and strategy firm Public Domain. Though it was branded the people's budget, only 7% of respondents feel that this budget is for the people. Meanwhile, a staggering 73% oppose the decision to increase the rate of taxation to 12%.
I very rarely give my own opinion, but clearly expressed in this survey, I believe the number is 90% of Bahamians say that they need to rethink this budget.
According to Public Domain, of the 800 people polled nationwide, 73% opposed the proposed VAT hike, 22% supported, and 5% aren't sure.
We're 3 people in this room right now. 2 of us oppose this strongly. So strongly opposed, and then another 7% somewhat opposed. So that's, again, you get to 3 out of 4.
Public opinion is quite similar on the taxation of gaming house operators, who could be taxed between 20% and 50% of revenue based on their earnings. Respondents were asked if they feel it is fair or unfair for gaming houses to be taxed upwards of 50% versus other industries like banking that are taxed at less than 10%. 73% of those polled believe the proposed sliding scale tax is unfair, while 21% believe it is fair. Meanwhile, 89% of respondents believe government should consider job losses in the gaming industry if new taxes are passed. Gaming house operators have estimated that 2,000 employees could lose their jobs as a result of the new tax.
When a large tax increase is put on one particular sector, the business community starts to say, what happens next year when you put it on another sector? So, for example, if next year, all of a sudden 50% of all public opinion polling firms are taxed at 50% of their income, what do I do then when I didn't say anything now? So we wanted to find out if people were feeling that. And clearly they think it's unfair.
Though the Minutes administration won some brownie points for eliminating VAT on certain breadbasket items, the survey shows 96% of respondents feel fruits and vegetables should also be VAT exempt. Persons polled also had very strong views on who they believe the 2018-2019 budget benefits. 7% believe this is the people's budget. 62% believe it benefits special interests within the F&M, and 16% believe this budget is like any other budget. Meanwhile, 76% of respondents believe this budget benefits the wealthy, while 13% believe it benefits the average Bahamian. We asked the Public Domain president what message should this survey send to the government.
My interpretation of this, especially the overwhelming response to this budget, is not necessarily we don't like you. It's you've not communicated to us in a way to help us understand why you're making these changes. And a good consultation and a communication process will go a long way to getting people to understand why these changes are necessary.
In conducting its telephone survey, Public Domain put 25 questions to 800 randomly selected people in households across the country between June 2nd and June 6th. The survey has a 3.5% margin of error. Reporting for our news, I'm Vonique Toot.
In other news, more than 1 year after taking office, the Minutes administration has appointed an independent director of public prosecution. During a packed ceremony at Government House today, Governor General Dame Marguerite Pinling handed acting DPP Garvin Gaskin his instruments of appointment.
The office of the DPP is committed to having an unwavering and dedicated focus on justice. In the words of Aristotle, you are what you repeatedly do. It is unapologetically accepted that justice must be consistently and enthusiastically served.
Gaskin's substantive appointment comes nearly a month after the Constitution Amendment Bill 2017 came into force. The bill empowers the DPP to institute and undertake criminal proceedings against any person before any court in respect of any offense against the law of the Bahamas, and to discontinue at any stage before judgment is delivered any such criminal proceedings instituted or undertaken by himself or any other person or authority.
This autonomy will permit the new office of the DPP to act by means of a process of rational reflection on the internationally recognized principles of such an office as particularly declared in the United Nations guidelines called the Havana Guidelines.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis says Gaskin's appointment fulfills a Free National Movement campaign promise.
Today, we witnessed the very first successfully implemented amendment to our nation's Constitution with confirmation of Mr. Gavin Gaskin in the new constitutional office of this nation's first independent Director of Public Prosecutions.
According to Dr. Minnis, the DPP may hold office for a period of 5 years and shall, at the time of expiration of such a period, be eligible for reappointment for a further period of 5 years, but may not hold the office beyond age 68.
The establishment of a constitutionally protected office of an independent prosecutor is a praiseworthy achievement for Bahamian democracy, as it has the potential to mark a clear break with the past.
Still to come on our news, murder suspects arraigned in the magistrate's court. Plus, despite a violent weekend, murders are down 32%. That and more when our news returns.